Welcome to Childcare Conversations with Kate and Carrie.
Well, today we're going to answer the age-old question. Carrie, why should somebody become a director?
Because it's fun. I mean, that's my default answer, but I guess it goes a lot further than that. I think we'll probably come up with, 5 or 6 different reasons, but the reason I became a director is because I also was going to be an owner. And so I wanted to be director qualified before I opened my own center.
Okay, so do you have to be a director to be an owner?
Do you have to? No. I think it is a good idea to be director qualified in order to, when you're an owner, so that you know what your director should know and what your director should do. And if your director breaks an arm, gets COVID, has to go on maternity leave, there's 57 million different things that could happen that you would have to step in at least temporarily to take the place of your director. And if you're not director qualified, you can't do that. So that's why I think every director should be, is because you need to be able to step in if there's an issue and you need to know what they should be doing. So that was my number one reason.
So you're, that's what I was going to say. So your number one reason is that you knew you wanted to be an owner, so you knew that you had to become a director. What might be another reason somebody who is listening to the podcast, or maybe somebody shared this podcast episode with them, is another reason why you should think about becoming a director?
There's more earning potential.
Okay, so make more money. You could potentially maybe decide to own a program. It's fun, or what'd you say, funner?
Yes.
It's more fun. I mean, to me, I think one of the things that's really interesting as a director, especially if you had been a classroom teacher, regardless of the age. So if you had gone from either early elementary school or a preschool director into a leadership role like an owner, one of the things I just love is the fact that I have the impact on children, not just in my classroom.
Yeah, you can definitely have a bigger impact as a director than as a teacher. I know another reason that a lot of times people come to our class is because they've been in the classroom for years and years and years, and they're like, I want to keep growing in my career, and this seems like the next logical step. They feel like they've gotten a little bit stagnant in the classroom, or they're just like, there's not enough challenge, because they can get kids to line up to go outside to playground. They've got that handled. They know how to handle whatever the behavioral issues that are normal for their age group, right? They've got their favorite books. They go to conferences, but they're like, yeah, I've heard all of this before. It might be a little different take on it, but say they work in a 3s classroom. How many workshops on toilet learning can you go to over the course of your lifetime? The answer is probably thousands, but are you going to learn things at thousands of different classes on toilet learning? Probably not. So a lot of people are like, I've done as much as I can in the classroom, and this is the next logical step for me.
Okay. So we know there are other ways that teachers can find their way in the field, but let's talk, I want to stay in that director mode. So it's a logical place professionally. They can impact more people. They might want to be an owner. It's fun, make more money.
They think they can do a better job of it than the last director they had. I hear that a lot too. It's like, well, the last person was an idiot. And if they got the job, I know I can do this job because I'm not an idiot. Hopefully your current director is not an idiot. It doesn't make you think that, but I hear that more often than is comfortable for me, that they are like, no, I can do this job. I've seen other people do it, and I know I can do it as well or better than they did. So I think that's a big one.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that is probably really key about being a director versus maybe being a teacher is that you have a passion for adults. because your staff are adults and your parents are adults. And those are places that you want to connect with. If you feel like you can no longer connect with that 2-year-old or whatever age classroom you were in, but you want to stay in the industry because you know you have lots of knowledge. Maybe you love training, but you want to train your staff to be the best they can be. Well, a great way to do that is by being a director.
Yeah, yeah. I see that definitely happening sometimes. I also see it sometimes that a person is just like, well, I want to have guaranteed hours. I want to know that I have predictability. And their thought process, which is not necessarily accurate, but their thought process is that the director has set hours. And some people think, oh, this will be an easier job than running a classroom. Physically, I would say it is less physically demanding on a typical day. But you do have the, oh, some kid threw a Duplo block down a toilet. Now I have to unseat the toilet and snake the toilet. And that is very physically demanding. But on the day to day, it's less physically demanding than being a teacher. It's more mentally demanding, I think, than being a teacher once you've been a teacher in that age group for a while. Like the first couple years you're with an age group, you're like, I've never seen this before. What am I going to do? But once you've done that age group for a few years, you're kind of like, yeah, I got this. I know how to handle this kind of situation. As a director, it takes a lot longer before you have that equanimity of, yeah, whatever comes up, I'm going to be able to handle it.
So I know that this episode is really to talk about why to become a director, but I think one thing that we need to at least address as far as the elephant in the room is that sometimes we get folks who come from being teachers and they come into being a director, and their perception is lots of money, perhaps maybe even a steady schedule. But one of the things that we see a lot is they're overwhelmed because they didn't really understand what the role is. So as succinctly as you can,
okay,
here's the challenge. Give me an idea for somebody who's coming into the class, who's coming into this role brand new, what they should expect, maybe their first month, what maybe a day in the life of a director might look like. Because I think if they can come in better educated with what that role is, and they understand why to get training. So one of the things that we know we see all the time, and it's in states all over the country where directors have a degree and they are qualified because they have a degree, but they may not have all the skills because that degree may be good for one thing, which is, you know, if you have a degree in early childhood education and you were in research, you might even have a master's or a PhD, that may never prepped you for HR, marketing, or business. So tell me a little bit about what is the job of the director normally?
I mean, so the job of a director can be extremely expansive. And if you've got other members of your team, you get to be like, oh, I'm only in charge of these things, and other people on my administrative team are in charge of other things. But you've got marketing, you've got enrollment. So you've got to let people know that you exist. And then once they know you exist, they come on a tour and they enroll. You've got hiring. So we've got to go out and find new staff, and then we've got to onboard them and train them and motivate them and engage them.
And
so
keep them. And keep them.
Well, if you engage them, you're probably going to keep them. And then we have classroom management, and then we have financial management, making sure that people are getting their invoices, that they're paying their invoices, that if there's late fees, those are applied, yada, yada, yada. That the staff are getting paid, your vendors are getting paid, you know, all of that. So there's some budgeting, some things called profit and loss statements and balance sheets. You might need to have, there's writing standard operating procedures. So there's being the operational director. So what is the standard operating procedure on how to change a diaper? I know you know how to change a diaper, but there are people going to come into your place of work who have never changed a diaper, or who have done it with what my grandma used to call a lick and a promise. And they're just kind of like, old diaper off, new diaper on. Whoa, there's some steps. We've got gloves, we've got hand washing, we've got to clean some areas, like maybe some ointment or some powder. Like there might be 15, 20 steps in your diaper change, because you got to wash your hands before, after, the child has to wash their hands, like all of that. So you need an SOP for changing a diaper. And that's one thing in some of your classrooms. You need to have standard operating procedures for how to throw out the trash. Good Lord. I mean, all the things that need standard operating procedures. So you're the operations director. You are a cost management person. I can't remember the term. It was in there, and then it just flew away as I started talking. So you are somebody who has to get bids on things and make sure that you're paying the lowest price for the highest quality. Curriculum coordination, parent communicator, because there's always issues where a parent is mad or a kid is behaving oddly in a classroom. And so we have to talk to the parents about, why is your kid dancing on the table singing Taylor Swift songs? Is that a thing you guys do at home? We need to talk about it.
I mean, they may also be the IT support staff.
Oh yeah, IT, because
and the cook.
I can't get my tablet to work, so I couldn't sign the kids in. I couldn't do nose to name. I'm like, honey, you have a list of kids in your classroom. If the tablet's not working because you didn't charge it last night, get paper works. But
yep. So your IT support, you might be the backup cook, or the food manager. You might be the plumber, van driver, absolutely. Transportation support staff, which may mean that you have to put gas in the van. You may have to go get the van inspected. Absolutely. And then of course there's all of the compliance record.
Oh yeah, licensing and other regulatory compliance. How could I forget that? That's
the compliance manager. Yes. that in a lot of states, that is the key difference between a director and an owner, or a curriculum coordinator, or any other admin staff. You are the compliance manager.
Yes. And that is the thing that I think almost nobody who comes from the classroom into administration is prepared for, is the compliance elements. Like they're like, oh, I'm going to be so much better about managing when people ask for time off. I'm going to give people all the time off that they need, because it's totally unreasonable that people can't have time off. And then you're like, how am I going to maintain ratios? Because licensing cares about ratios, and all kinds of things that as a classroom teacher you thought were ridiculous. When you step into the admin role, you're like, oh, this was in regulations. The whole, I have to wash my hands before the diaper change. I have to wash my hands and the child's hands at the end of the diaper change, the gloves, all of that is regulations. That's not just a suggestion because the director was a germaphobe. No, that was the law. So I'd say that's probably the thing people are the most unprepared for. If they're, whether they have a degree in a related field or not, regulations is probably not covered very much in any of your workshops or college courses. Like there might be workshops on stuff that pertains to your age classroom, but not the whole thing. In Texas, minimum standards is like 400 pages, and that's only one of 4 agencies that have oversight over you. Other states have teeny tiny books, but then they reference other things. They're like, as in Appendix F of this other part of the state code. And you're like, well, where's Appendix F? I don't understand. So you have to go searching for all the things that are part of your licensing compliance. So,
well, I think that brings up a really valid point. So, we have a couple of different courses that we offer. We have a childcare executive leadership credential, which is 300 hours, which is everything from child development to business management. We have an administrator's credential, which is 50 hours. which does a great job prepping you for this is day one. And even with, I mean, we've had students in the last 22 years who have PhDs in early childcare, but they have no business background. We have people who meet the requirements because they have the 3 classes in business, or what our state regulatory agency classifies as business, which can be psychology, group communication. They may have nothing to do with business management. And so we have people who come to our classes with all different backgrounds, but at least when they come to our class, they leave it going from overwhelmed to feeling like they've got this, because they now at least have the baseline language, they have the baseline resource material. So we don't ever expect you to be an expert. We know that basically we're preparing you for day 1 through 364.
In that small course, in the one that's 40, 50 hours, in the one that's 300, that's the equivalent, excuse me, of 6 college courses. And they are college courses specifically on managing an early childhood or out of school time program. They're not art appreciation, which I loved, and kitty lit, which I loved, but those courses are not necessarily applicable on a day-to-day basis for the director. And my children's literature course would have counted as one of the child development courses to become a director. And it's not really very relevant because you're not buying books every day, but children's literature is a child development course.
Well, all of my pediatric nursing classes counted as mine. So I totally get that. So, I've definitely spent more time in child development classes in the last 30 years than I ever got in college. So one of the things that we're able to do with our executive leadership credential is take your previous learning experience that you have documented and help you really go, I really do know things, and figure out how to put that together on paper. Because we do find we've got directors all over the country who they get frustrated because somebody else is getting the job because somebody else has that magic piece of paper. So, we're excited to be able to support people all over the country find their next step and be that resource for them. And Carrie, I know that the other thing that's really important, and we talk about it in all of our books and all of our trainings, is finding that support team. Can you wrap up and give me just a little bit about why a support team? Or you have something
I was
else?
going to say one other thing before I got to that,
Okay.
which is if you're in a director position and you are feeling overwhelmed and you met all the licensing requirements and they gave you the job, that doesn't mean you can't go back and take either the director credentialing class or the executive class and get deeper knowledge and even out any areas where you were like, well, nobody told me about that. So you can come in and go, oh, I understand now how the Americans with Disabilities Act applies to my enrollment process, kind of things. So what did you want me to wrap up with? I know you said something, but I didn't write it down.
About the importance of having that team or having those coaches,
yes.
because coaches and mentors are key.
Coaches, mentors, and people you just ask questions of. So it might be that you have young children, and so your child's pediatrician is part of your advisory council, because you can go ask him questions or her questions when you go in for your child's visit. So you should have a team of people that are your resources. Sometimes those resources, their main goal is to be cheerleaders, be yay, yay, rah, rah, you got this. And sometimes you need people on your team whose job it is to go, are you crazy? That is not how you should handle that. So you need to have some people who are giving you unconditional love, and some people who are a reality check, some people that are your mentors because you read their books. Tony Robbins, Kate and I both think of as a mentor. I've never met the man. I just know he appears to be very tall. So some of the people on your team are people you see in real life. Some are people you see on YouTube or other venues. And some are in your world already, and you just need to think, I'm going to add them to the advisory council and give them a job on a piece of paper that is just for you, so that you know, okay, I'm going to talk to Robin about HR issues because Robin has been working in human resource management for the past 5 years. So she's going to be the person I talk to about what I could have done better in this interview. And that I've got Virginia, who I'm going to talk to about how to set my business up for growth, to have multiple locations, because she's done that in 3 different businesses. And, this is Pete, and he's on my advisory council because he's my lawyer. And, who are the people that you're going to build a relationship with to help support you to do the best job? We think a coach and a mentor are some things that you definitely need to have. I do a lot more mentoring. Kate does a lot more coaching. I also do consulting. I will coach you. I do know how to do that. That's just not my favorite. I have a harder time doing that unless I start with that mentoring or that consulting role, and then I can go into coaching with you. But first I have to tell you what you're doing wrong. Kate is much better at, helping you figure out what you did wrong. I just need to tell you, this is 5 things you should not have done. And once we get those 5 handled, then we can go into coaching.
Well, hopefully we didn't scare you off. And hopefully if you found this episode informative and you'd like, people in your circle, you've got teachers who have been with you for decades, who have a wealth of knowledge, who you want to encourage to continue to grow. It's okay as a director to share this episode with them. If you've got some staff that maybe don't really understand what you do, this might be a great episode to share. Carrie, how can they share it and what should they do with it?
So that you can share it on any of the podcasting apps, from Apple Podcasts to Spotify to Overcast. There's about 50 of them, and we're on all of them, I think. But if you prefer to see our crazy faces, you can definitely do that. We also have this podcast on YouTube, so you can see us if you prefer to see us instead of just hearing us in your earbones. What else would help get the word out about this episode and other episodes is for you to write reviews. So you can write it on YouTube, you can write it on the podcasting app that you use, but let other people know about us, and then more people will learn about how to be a director, why they would want to, because you and I both know that this job is one of the most fun and impactful jobs you can have. And we want more people to know that and to step into the leadership role that will change their life and change other people's lives. So leave a review, share the show, because people ought to know. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to Childcare Conversations with Kate and Carrie. Want to learn more? Check out our website at texasdirector.org. And if you've learned anything today, leave us a comment below and share the show.